Hello there, good evening, and thanks for joining me once again in this fresh edition of the program, The Insight on Equinoxe Television. And tonight we are inside the residence of AYAH ABINE, Chief Justice AYAH ABINE. This day we shall be giving you the insight as far as this personality is concerned. We shall be telling you how he was arrested, his detention conditions, and even after he was released, what next for Chief Justice AYAH ABINE, the now former Advocate General at the Supreme Court of Cameroon. Join me and my guests right ahead. Yeah, welcome back. Chief Justice AYAH ABINE, former Advocate General at the Supreme Court. You are a former Member of Parliament. You are the founder of Justice for All. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, and I'm pleased to welcome you and your team to my humble home.
It's a pleasure. Today you are called former Advocate General at the Supreme Court. How do you feel being called former Advocate General at the Supreme Court, knowing fully well that when you were sent on retirement you were not around?
No. I think it's a very normal course. I mean, things are in the normal course of happenings. I entered the judiciary in '78. By the time I was sent on retirement, I had served my country for 39 years. While I was in Parliament, I applied to go on early retirement, what they call anticipé. And it is the Ministry of Justice that rejected my file. If there came a time they thought it was now, the time was not right for me to go, I could only say thank you. And especially thank you to God for having given me the opportunity to serve, and to serve, in my opinion, quite successfully.
What did you do when you heard the news? Because definitely you were not around, you were somewhere. We shall be talking about that in the course of this program. But what did you do when you heard that news?
No, we knew in advance that the intention of government was either to have me dead, to humiliate me, put me in prison, or at least get me out of their circle. The newspapers published, I watched television programs, and I was convinced. In fact, a week before, Meteo published how I would be put on retirement, and then I'd be prosecuted and put in jail. Front page lead story. So when I heard it, it was already stale news. The family had known that I would be put on retirement.
But the family did not know that you'd be arrested?
Of course not. The family did not know, nor did I know. It happened in a way that the image of Cameroon today around the world is tarnished. Because first of all, I had what is referred to in the Criminal Procedure Code as privileged jurisdiction, which is to say that even if I committed an offense, the President of the Supreme Court had to appoint one magistrate to do the investigation and 3 others to do the trial if necessary, and that none of them should be less than at least my rank or of a higher rank. So to be arrested without the President of the Supreme Court having put in place what the law required was an aberration and embarrassment to everybody.
Okay, we shall be coming to that now. Chief Justice AYAH, we understand that the Higher Judicial Council, or we don't know if it is the President of the Republic, will have given you additional years.
Yes, they did, because in the normal course of things, I was supposed to go on retirement 2 years earlier, because the age that was given to me to enable me to write VOPC, almost the equivalent of O-level in French. I was born in 1950, though my baptismal card is showing 1952. I just accepted that age to enable me to write the brevet. So by that age, I was supposed to go on retirement in 2015, not 17. So there was some kind of tacit extension already. But the law requires that it should be documentary. What was peculiar, however, is that whereas I was 67 and forced to go on retirement, other magistrates of 70, 73, up to 80 are still in active service.
So today you can say you were forced to go on retirement?
Perhaps yes, but as I've said, I had earlier applied to go on my own. I thought that my services were needed elsewhere, in the civil society, for instance, because when I look at the judiciary and what's happening to the ordinary Cameroonian in particular, I feel unable even to eat. The situation is deplorable.
Okay. Have you been served any letter yet after the decision of the Higher Judicial Council?
That is the peculiar thing. You know, I was in captivity, and how to save me was the trouble. On my lawyers, my residents, on me personally. So I was not served, I was not notified. I was not served until a few days ago, on the 14th of this very month. I went to the ministry and asked to be notified the decree, the relevant decree. And curiously, before then, the Procurator General of the Supreme Court had taken upon himself to break into my office containing my personal effects and installed somebody else. In fact, that was within the first 4 or 5 weeks of the decree being read on the radio. And this is in sharp contrast with what happened to me, because when I was appointed, it took them 6 months to give me an office and a second-hand vehicle. So what was the rush in this particular case? They knew my son, who had been coming there for the past 2 years. They knew how to contact him so that they could open in his presence and get him to recover my personal effects. Because whereas they give us the official robe and the official wig, what they call full bottom, when we go to the court for sessions, we go with our own personal robes and their personal wigs. So I had my personal effects in the office, and as of now, I do not know where they are.
So meaning you can even sue them to court?
Well, maybe God will give me some enlightenment.
So do you think that your case is different? You are given a second-hand vehicle, your office is given 6 months after you're appointed?
Not only different. When they gave me the second-hand vehicle, of course, it broke down within weeks. Within months, let me be kind enough. And my mechanic gave me a list of spare parts needed. I took the list to the Procurator General, and he held it back at me, saying it was in English. I should go and translate it into French. And I understood the political language, and so I did not. And as a consequence, in the last days, the last weeks before my captivity, I was going to work by taxi. I couldn't run a personal car because the government up to now is owing me 17 months of salary, and I had no money for a personal car. So I was going to work by taxi. And curiously, before I could even be given an office, new vehicles came, and people even junior to me were given vehicles, brand new vehicles from Japan. I was told that I was not entitled, I don't know, without any explanation. I waited. Later on, another consignment of 15 new vehicles from Japan came. And again, they were given out to the judges to the exclusion of Paul AYAH. So my case is not only peculiar in this small way, it has been peculiar in so many ways.
So you are considered l'ennemi de l'État, enemy of the state?
I do not know. Everybody is free to say what they like. The best of me is the fact that I served my country in all honesty. I am one of the only few senior magistrates without a child as a magistrate. All my children were turned away from Enam when they saw the name AYAH. Perhaps the only senior magistrate was retired without a retirement home, without a car. So my case has been so special. Anybody can say anything about me. We're in a democracy. I cannot judge myself, but I know that I served my country to the best of my ability, honestly, within the law, and with integrity.
Chief Justice ABINE, you were arrested on the 21st of January. That's about some 4 days after the arrest of the consortium leaders. Now, you arrested in their residence here in the nation's capital, Yaoundé. Narrate to us what happened on that fateful day.
You know, the family has said over and over, and I like to insist that I was not arrested. I was abducted. In other words, I was kidnapped. Because as I've told you, there's a section of the Criminal Procedure Code by which I could not be arrested. Generally, with the present Criminal Procedure Code, nobody who has not appeared before the examining magistrate can be arrested outside cases where the person is caught red-handed committing a crime, what they call flagrante delicto. That's one. The second thing is that you cannot be arrested and taken into custody on a Saturday, Sunday, or public holiday. But in my case, so it was.
On a Saturday?
On a Saturday. Yeah. So you see that the whole thing was kidnapping, not arrest. Here I was, sitting on this very chair, watching a match of the African Cup of Nations. Virtually bare-bodied, I had only an underwear. And people smashed here, 6 people armed. One of them came up to me and told me they had order to take me away. So what is called an order? You have a warrant of arrest? No. Who has sent you? No answer. I told them that I'm not going anywhere. The person who was their leader, that I eventually discovered that I was the colonel in charge, held me by the belt and said if I insisted, I had to make tremal. I told them I was not going anywhere. My wife had been sick all along in Boya for the previous, I think, 6 months or so. Nobody knows, by dint of some destiny, she came from Boya that very afternoon and just ran into the kitchen. She was on crutches trying to prepare me something to eat. She came out. Before then, my last son had cautioned the man and paid the respect that he should respect me, if only for my age. And my wife came and said, look, if they want to take you, just go. Don't insist on the law. And told the people, I'm going to change clothes and follow him. One of them followed my wife right into her bedroom. My wife said, but you want me to change clothes before you? He said he didn't care about that. So my wife eventually had to follow us with her kitchen clothes.
And you, what were you putting on? We had information that you were arrested, what you say, abducted like Laurent Gbagbo?
Yes.
When they met him?
And, you know, by coincidence, Laurent Gbagbo was in underwear when he emerged from his palace. So too was I, until my son had to rush to the room and look for a gun for me to, put on. So they said they were taking me to the military tribunal. Military tribunal working on a Saturday after 5 p.m. said yes. So they took me from here to the road, and one of them entered on the other side of the car, on the seat behind, put me in the middle, another one sat, then we started driving. When we got to Génie Militaire, the phone rang, And they said, no, they are not going to the military tribunal. They are instead going to the gendarmerie headquarters known as SED. So we went to the gendarmerie headquarters. When we got there, they said I had no right to use my phone. When we got there, I told them, no, I must inform my lawyer about what's happening. Exceptionally, they said I could call. I called and asked my lawyer to come. And they immediately seized my phone. From that moment until my release, the phone was with them. So they brought a piece of paper, whatever was on it, and said I should sign. I said, the way you took me, I don't have glasses. I don't have reading glasses. I cannot sign a document that I have not read, so I will not sign. In the meantime, my lawyer came, and after they had discussed, they said they would hear me the next day, which was Sunday. And my lawyer said no, it was already committed. They had to push it to Monday. They went and arranged something they called a cell, which is worse than a dungeon, because there were 2 holes behind, and the holes had been blocked, completely sealed. To get into the cell, there was a small corridor of about 80 centimeters wide. There was a cell on the left, then my own was the second. Now, that corridor had 2 doors, one with metals and the other one with panes. So when the one with panes, which was inside, was locked, the whole place was without air. This cell, as I've said, had no window, and of course, even the holes behind were blocked. So in the course of the night, of course, I just sat up the whole night because the mattresses were wet. Because of the heat, if you are there, you must wet the mattress from time to time. There's a tap there. Wet yourself with the mattress to be able to put up with the heat. So when there was power failure around 3 o'clock, I started transpiring profusely. I developed palpitations, and I got to a point where I was virtually passing out. I started hitting the door, and by some stroke of luck, some lieutenant was nearby. When he opened the doors of the corridor and then my own and touched me, he stepped behind, frightened. So he instructed that they should not close the door with the panes, they should only close the one with the metals, so that I could have some air, and that the door into my cell should be left open to allow me have access to the corridor. And that's how I survived until the next morning.
That should be one of the most horrible scenes you've ever had.
I was in that cell for 2 days. Next morning they brought me tea. My wife saw me and exclaimed because my face was said to be swollen. I had no mirror, I could not look at myself. And everybody saw that my days were really numbered. I was not allowed to take tea for up to 5 minutes. Not allowed to sit, I just stood, and then they put me back. Till Monday now, I was brought out and then taken to the colonel's office for whatever. There we had a team of gendarmes and policemen, and then somebody introduced herself, a young lady, to me, and said she had come to interrogate me, to translate from French. I said, on what? And who are you, by the way? She told me she was Assistant Commissioner of Government. And I said, you would interrogate me on what? What am I accused of? And then, without her replying, I went on to, one policeman chimed in and said, yes. You've not told him, you've not introduced yourself properly, you've not told him what is the suspicion against him, then how do you proceed to interrogate him? I told her that the only thing that preoccupied me at that time was my health, and that if they put me back in that cell for 30 minutes, I was going to die, and that I would prefer to die where I was. I think the colonel...
Did you mean it, or you were frightening them?
I meant it, of course. If they put me back there, I would have died. I've told you that it was not only windowless, But it was airtight when the door with the pane was closed. The place was airtight. All my life, from 64, I've lived in very good homes. A white man, a British soldier, Colonel Valentine, took me from my parents on the 13th of February 1964. And all along I lived in clean homes, well ventilated. From that time to date. So to put me in that kind of place was really killing me. I believe till today that the intention was not to kidnap me, but to kill me. Maybe the people who were sent here didn't know exactly what was the intention of those who sent them. And that's why they had to change course from the military tribunal to SED and so on. So the colonel understood, seeing my condition. He went and arranged, in fact, got some lieutenant out of an office and evacuated all the furniture there and put me in the room. I didn't go back to the cell. It was my son who went and brought my bag from the cell.
So you are now a VIP prisoner?
Let's say so. I must acknowledge that in that room, things were different. The only difficulty I had, the main difficulty I had was from 10 p.m. to 6 to 6. My door was locked from outside and there was no internal toilet. So I was under obligation to stay without easing myself from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day. And 6 a.m. was not every day because the day they went for sports, I had to wait till at times 7 or so. So, I mean, the call of nature is something by reflex you cannot control. So that made my life really difficult in that regard.
So you were arrested within the context of the Anglophone crisis. We understand that other persons were arrested after you was Manjo BBC. Now, did anyone corner you that your arrest had a link with the Anglophone crisis?
I was in SED for 223 days. And nobody told me why I was there. I had a question that almost every 2 days on the average, I asked. In two ways, same question in two ways. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Repeatedly, I never added or subtracted a word from those two statements. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Till I was told to leave. Nobody told me precisely why I was there, whether it was in connection with the Anglophone crisis, whether it was something else. Nobody has told me anything, properly speaking. Apart from the fact that on the day of my release, I was told that they had found nothing against me. My wife was present, Barrister Mona, who came for some other person's case, was present, and that I was free to go to any part of the world without any restriction. What they were looking for, I don't know. If it was in connection with the Anglophone crisis, the law against them, so-called the law on terrorism, provides that there is no preliminary investigation. Once you are arrested, there's what they call mise en jugement direct. They just take you to court as if it were flagrante delicto. If it were so, they would not take some to court and keep me for 223 days. Maybe that's what they had in mind, but up to now nobody has told me. So it was.
And not even the habeas corpus application could succeed.
You are taking me now to talk about the judiciary in this country. If there is anything that is wrong with Cameroon, it is because of the judiciary. Here is somebody who has privileged jurisdiction. This is somebody arrested without warrant. This is somebody who is not supposed to be detained on a Saturday. All these things are written in black and white. You don't need to study law to be able to read and understand. I went to the court, to my junior colleagues, with these three laws in my favor. And they still didn't do me justice. Went on appeal. The Court of Appeal still didn't do me justice. I said, let me meet my colleagues of the Supreme Court. Between the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court, a distance of just 10 meters by cross flight, they told me the file was missing.
Meantime, you trusted your colleagues of the Supreme Court?
They were under a duty to give judgment. Whether I trust them or not, they had to do their work. They were under a duty to give judgment according to Section 474 of the Criminal Procedure Code. Latest 4th of June this year. We are now in September. They have not given judgment. And that is a court that is supposed to apply the law and ensure that the lower courts apply the law. It is the first to go against the law. So I would not even expect anything good from the Supreme Court of Cameroon. Wow. And if the higher jurisdiction is of that level, then you just dismiss the whole judiciary. How do you explain that of the scores of junior magistrates I trained, because during their field work, they came to me over the years. Of all of them, of my friends in the judiciary, for my 223 days in captivity, only one had the courage to visit me. Since my release, only one has had the courage to come to my house. Since my kidnapping, no one magistrate has called me on the phone up to this moment I am talking. And they call that the judiciary. The first operative phrase in the oath of the judiciary is to do justice without fear. And if the magistrates are the cowards that they are, I mean, the only other thing is, if they are not cowards, then they are ignorant.
But Chief Justice ABINE, you have been part of this system. What did you do when you were still part of this system to solve that?
No, I don't know what you call system. You see, the judiciary is unique all over the world, in all democratic societies. The legislature enacts laws, the executive administers, and the judiciary makes sure that the executive complies with the laws. First, that the laws are properly within the Constitution and that they are properly applied. So the judiciary is unique. And there I was. I won't go to the extent of drumming myself. All I can say is that I've thrown the challenge to the whole world that anybody should come forward and say I didn't do him justice, or that I did him justice in exchange for money. I did my work to the best of my ability, with integrity, within the law, and in all honesty.
But in other African countries, we saw the recent case of Kenya, where the country's Supreme Court not the election that saw the re-election of Uhuru Kenyatta. Can you say that with the case of Cameroon, the executive has a commanding power over the judiciary?
You see, you make me laugh, because when we say that the judiciary is made up of learned people, there are people who are learned. And once you are learned, it means your intellect is developed. And if the intellect is developed, you fear nothing. You don't fear facing the truth. In the Constitution of Cameroon, the judiciary moved in 1996 from authority to a power. The judiciary is now a power and is said to be independent. In the normal course of things, magistrates ought to stand up and tell the Minister of Justice that we are not under you. You cannot be a power and at the same time you are under an authority, a small authority of the executive. That's the first thing. The second thing is that you should be courageous enough to say, look, now there are two provisions of the Constitution. One saying that the president guarantees the independence of the judiciary. The other one saying that the judiciary is a power and independent. And therefore, the one that came later annulled the first one, making the president the head of the Judicial Council. Failing that, independence is not something that is just in the abstract or general, necessarily general. Independence, depends on the individual judges. You take your decision. If it is a panel, yes. Even there you are allowed by law to give a dissenting judgment, saying that I don't agree with your decision. So when you find real Supreme Courts like that of Kenya, you understand that's how the judiciary ought to work. In the context of Cameroon, we have a lot of what they call judicial discretion. In a particular offense, they tell you that the punishment is from this minimum to that maximum. You have a lot of latitude. Even this minimum, you have another latitude to suspend or to impose a symbolic fine of 1 franc. If you impose 5 francs just because 1 franc is no longer in circulation, but the law says 1 franc. So that is how a judge works. The moment people are looking at appointments, promotions, the fear, the moment that happens, the judiciary is condemned. And that's why we are where we are today. Before I was kidnapped, I granted an interview to one of you or maybe a newspaper, saying that if I had a say in this country, 80% of the present members of the judiciary would not be fit to be in the judiciary. Because
don't you think that this is one of the reasons why most of them did not call you or visit you?
You see, you cannot operate the way we operate in this country and hope that things can work well. Before the present criminal procedure code, anybody could put anyone in prison in Cameroon. But the present criminal procedure code was a revolution. I was in Parliament and I made this very statement that it was a revolution. Unfortunately, it is now that almost 63% of persons in prison are awaiting trial. And you think that the magistrates are doing their work? We have a case in Buya where somebody was remanded in prison custody for 8 months because his dog killed his neighbor's dog. And he was jailed for his dog killing the neighbor's dog. And you call that the judiciary?
So what way forward for the judiciary before we continue? In a country which is like a presidential system where the president is the ultimate, the alpha and the omega?
There's a musician who was called Bongos Ikwe. He was just repeating what everybody knows. What is good never comes easy. You take your stance and you pay a price for it. I've already told you that my children were not allowed to enter NAM as magistrates. There are people here who have 3 of their children in the judiciary. You pay a price. But because of your oath, you should do your job in accordance with your oath. That's the least we expect. All that we need in Cameroon today is the proper training of members of the judiciary, so that they don't come out going out to bribe the authorities, not to send them to the rural areas, bribing the authorities for promotion, for appointments. As a grade 1 magistrate, I pushed vehicles to Mwa, very bad road. Grade 2, I pushed from Kumbo to Jakiri. Grade 3, I pushed from Wum to Fondong. Grade 4, I pushed from Kumba to Ndian. But I still stood my ground and did my job. I'm not saying that I was an angel, but I did my best. But now, everybody wants to be within the town. And so, the way forward is to get the proper persons who enter the judiciary as a vocation, more or less. When they refer to us as your lordship, your worship, we are doing the work of God. We are like God. We are doing the job that only God can do. So we should not place ourselves at the same level like people in the customs, people in taxation, people in the administration, where Dieu will tell you that, oh, HANSON, you are right. Madam, you too, you are right, small. No, you don't do that. In the judiciary, you decide. And there's no way you cannot take a decision in the judiciary. When you see somebody who has had a judgment, postponing, adjourning for judgment, adjourning several times, just know that there's something cooking behind. He has maybe eaten both ways and is now unable to decide. It should not be so in the judiciary.
All right. Chief Justice AYAH ABINE, let's come back to your detention. At a certain moment, we saw on social media AYAH ABINE is dead. AYAH ABINE is critically sick. He has been rushed to the hospital. How was it with your health?
My health, everybody seeing me even now, who has seen this face before, knows that I would not have grown old and dark overnight. That's in 8 months, I look the way I look now. This is my color, but if you see my face, it's completely different. It's dark. My health at the moment is very, very unsure. I developed heart attack. The doctor found so it was, and every month I have to consult a cardiologist. At times I have as many as 10 tablets. I've already taken the dose this morning. But let anyone go around all the hospitals in Cameroon and see whether between 1998, when I had an accident, very ghastly accident, where I lost teeth and so on, and the time of my abduction, I had consulted anybody, I mean any hospital, anywhere, they have the means to investigate. They come and tell me. Today, as I close my right eye, I'm not seeing anything. I see something like a form in front of me here, and that's all.
Which is me.
You see? So I've lost my left eye. They have recommended surgery, either at AYAH or Bafusan. So my health has deteriorated completely. Somebody, you said here that I was treated like prisonnier de luxe, as they say. Perhaps, but the fact remains that for my age, I was put in that particular cell, which I believed was prepared before I was put in there. And then in the new cell, I lay on the floor with something in the name of a mattress of about 5 centimeters thick for 62 days before I was given a bed. And if you imagine that at this age, every day of my life, I had to go from 10 to 6 without going to ease myself. All that, you know, has resulted in my present state of health, which is, as I've said, uncertain. What is worse, the government is withholding my arrears of salaries for 17 months. The government has put me on retirement. They kept me in detention so that I would not even apply for my pension. At the moment I am talking, without having been notified, the Procurator General made it a condition that for me to have my allowances, which kept me going. Because for the time I was a member of the Supreme Court, my salary, my net salary was just 100,000. He's withholding my allowances up to now. How do you expect somebody who has not been notified to hand over? But he went ahead and broke into my office. So right now, my drugs, each time I go for a checkup is 30,000. The fee I pay, I don't want to talk about petrol to and fro. And even the 100,000 I used to have is no more. So I cannot even treat myself until it pleases the government. Maybe this is another way of eliminating me softly instead of the brutal way they wanted to use. That's where we are.
Definitely when you were in jail, you were following up development in the 2 English-speaking regions of Cameroon. The Anglophone crisis, you were following up the massive arrests, you were following up the killings, the harassment in some cases. How did you feel?
You know, the colonel allowed me to have a television set and a radio. but I was not allowed to use internet. My phone was seized from me. So there was only one-way traffic. But I kept abreast of what was happening. Anybody who knows what I have been, when I ruled against the SIMA Code or HADA, in the 90s, few Anglophone, even lawyers, understood what I was talking about. It took them 16 years or more to understand what I had started fighting for. So when I saw what, the extent to which this issue had dragged on, it was only natural that I felt, as I'm feeling right now, for those who are still in detention. I've been to Kondengi, in spite of my difficult health. With little means, I still shared the little I had with those in Kondengi. I went to SED a few days ago. I was told, since they're on hunger strike, it would be contradictory for them to allow me to go and give them food items. So I felt really bad. I have a friend who was one of the pillars of those who received me in America in 2011, when they invited me to hear my ideologies in respect of the presidential election, Mr. Angalim. He came to Cameroon for a funeral, leaving his old mother there, his wife, the children, and went out only to buy bread. Stumbled on a newspaper, I think the Post. So on his way back with a loaf of bread and a newspaper, he said he was reading a newspaper on the Anglophone crisis, and they picked him up. That was last year, before the rest of us. And he's there. I went to Kondengi. He showed me signs of torture on him. He has lost one of his toes. So you can imagine, the feeling. There was a day here I could hardly eat. For all the facilities I had, facilities in the sense that I had a TV set and a radio, I imagine those people in the kind of cell in which I was for the first 2 days, and I feel what it feels to be where they are. So it hurt me a lot. I think what we should do right now is to fight and let the Francophones understand the meaning of filing a nolle. You file a nolle to stop prosecution. And once prosecution has stopped, charge number so stop. You cannot go inside again and say, this one should go, these other ones. That is challenging the authority of the President of the Republic and going counter to the meaning of a nolle. That's what we are trying to go around and are explaining to our Francophone colleagues, members of the judiciary and the auxiliaries of justice, that everybody should be freed.
Chief Justice AYAH ABINE, permit me go back to the scene when you were released from the Secretary of State Secretariat for Defense. We shall be going back to the machines. Our reporter Roland Akong is on standby. He will be telling us what happened on that day. We shall be right back.
Papa. Hello. When are you, Papa?
AYAH ABINE arrives his BMRC Tamtam residence midday Thursday, escorted by a senior official of the National Gendarmerie. The super-skilled magistrate of the Supreme Court of Cameroon has been in jail for 8 months. Though visibly weakened, AYAH appears relaxed, spends time on the phone thanking callers for their prayers, saying the ordeal is over.
Yes, I can only thank God. That's the most I can say today. Thanking God that it's ended up the way it has ended up. Maybe someday it will give me the energy to talk, but today I'm not in the mood to say anything.
It is the first time in 8 months that AYAH is speaking to the media and on the phone. The family applauds his release.
You are the one who fought this fight, Equinoxe. I don't know. I was asking myself, but where did these people know us? But I think God made you people for this fight. So I thank you people very much. And I thank God. I thank God. I still repeat, I thank God that For 8 months, it ended this way. And that the commissioner of government came today and told Papa that, Papa, you are free. You have done nothing. That there's nothing against you. Go. You can fly.
But they are complaining of his poor health condition due to bad detention conditions.
Yes, he was a very healthy man. He was a very healthy man. But today, I don't know, his medicines are there. Every morning he has 8 tablets to take. And the doctor following him said that he should not stay 1 day without taking his drugs. Even if he has to see him tomorrow and the drug gets finished today, he should look for the drug, that we should not wait.
Why was AYAH Paul Abine kidnapped and detained for 8 months without a charge? Who even ordered for his kidnap and detention? These are some of the questions we heard people saying they want an answer to.
That was Roland Akon with the incident, or what happened on that fateful day when Chief Justice AYAH Paul Abine was released. Now we saw beautiful, colorful images and even emotional scene there. Today you are released. Chief Justice AYAH Paul Abine is free. You can travel to the US, to UK, and wherever you want to go to. Can we say today that you owe gratitude to President Paul Biya, who ordered for your release? Have you sent a letter to him already saying thank you, Mr. President?
I have no cause to rejoice over my release. Why was I abducted in the first place? If anybody tells me this is the reason we kept you for 223 days, I can turn to Mr. Biya and say, oh, thank you for getting me out of the hurdle. Nobody has told me anything. I know to the best of my knowledge that I have all along acted with integrity within the law and in justice. I have no reason to thank anybody except my God. I've already thanked my God. The people who fought for me, journalists like you, especially Equinoxe, Emergence, Messager, I cannot name them. Each time I sit at the computer to write something to thank them, see, I get blinded with tears. That small AYAH generated so much compassion across the world. Those are people I have to thank.
Not the person who signed the...
No. Was I charged? If I was charged, and he signed a nolle on my behalf, I would thank him. I wasn't charged. Up to now, I don't know why I was kept in captivity. I wouldn't even talk of custody. Why I was kept in captivity, I don't know.
It has gone viral, or it went viral on social media while you were still in detention, that you had some sort of co-war with the present Justice Minister, Laurent Esso.
I have never had an encounter with the present Minister of Justice. I've never had any encounter. If he had anything against me, it is best known to him. Only he can answer. What I know is that I applied to go on early retirement. His predecessor, Mr. Amadou Ali, started following up the file. When he came, the file disappeared. And he's the very man who turned around to send me on retirement, leaving my senior, much older people in place. So if he owes me a grudge, I don't know where I wronged him. And so it is impossible for me to answer if I was in any cold war with him.
But you read those posts on social media, definitely.
No, I was cut off, as I've told you. I could watch TV, I could hear the radio, but I was not allowed to be on the
Because at a certain point, you were also writing on your official Facebook page. We saw you wrote something concerning the MP for AYAH. What did he do?
Yes, because those are the people who conspired against not AYAH only as a person, but against PAP. You know, after my performance in 2011, in fact, I was third. My representative at the National Commission for the Final Counting of Votes kept, briefing me. I was third. After they had counted all the votes, all of a sudden, Mr. Damanda Mjoya and Mr. Gaga Aman were pushed before me, and I became fifth. So it was so astounding that people saw PAP as a threat, the only opposition party to rely on, even today. So when the Guardian Post came out with a publication that I was tipped to be the consensual candidate for the opposition sometime late last year, I started receiving death threats without telephone numbers. People came right to the quarter here and started, designing whatever plans, locating my residence. People were sent to the internet to attack me. People like Patrick Mbala, Patrick Dupree, I have, my library is rich. I have those posts stored. After my abduction, they sent somebody calling himself Dr. Fuller, Dr. Penda, to attack me on TV, on the TV stations. So the whole thing was a fight against PAP. And it could well be that the Minister of Justice, being in the government, was one of them. In fact, that's how I construed the situation. How do you explain that at this moment I am talking, I was in captivity without charge. My Secretary General was tipped off and he ran away. Raymond, yes. They arrested the sister in his place and kept her in custody for 2 weeks. After that, they replaced her with Akoson's brother, who was in the civil service. He's still in custody up to now. The father is on the run because they are after him. How do they pay for the crimes of, if any crimes, Akoson may have committed? In Mamfe, my national campaign manager, Mr. Abuno, is on the run. When he left, when he fled, I should say, they arrested the wife with a baby of, I hear, 2 weeks old, and locked her up with that baby for 4 days, that she should produce the husband.
So today you are suspecting the MP for AYAH because you said before your arrest he made some calls?
He called my wife and said I had been invited to to the gendarmerie. So if it happens that I am sent back home, my wife should let him know. He has had my phone. I helped him while he was in school. In fact, of all the AYAH students, I helped him most. He had my number. I had not been arrested. How could he be calling my wife? Just wanted to know whether my wife was with me, so that if they came to pick me up or maybe eliminate me, they should know that I was alone. And truly, if I was alone in the house here, the way those people came, it would have been a disaster. So I suspect all of them, and I have no reason not to suspect them. Apart from my manager, my former coordinator, Abang, is in custody as well. My vice president is on the run as well. I mean, who has been spared? Even at the divisional level, the administration is running after my representative, my divisional representative at Bangem. You cannot tell me that if there's an Anglophone problem, it's only members of PAP that are targeted. No other party. SDF marched in Bamenda, they marched in Boya, they have not been disturbed. Other parties, my friend Kawala, who took up the case as if it was a personal case, has made statement. Barrister Mona even said we could fight, that we should fight. It was spared.
That was on the 13th of January.
Thank you. Akere Mona was invited to the very sad and allowed to go home. He didn't have the privileged jurisdiction that I had, let me say. So you see, it is PAP that is targeted. And AYAH happens to be the national president, who all along has said, the way we are is not good. Let us sit down at a round table and discuss how Francophones and Anglophones can live together and document it for the protection of the minority. That is all I have said, and I'm still saying it even now. The unfortunate thing with Cameroonians is that we have people call themselves intellectuals or not. When somebody tells you there's no Anglophone problem, and he says it's an intellectual, and he's speaking in French, is French a Cameroonian language? And if he speaks in French, why does he think the Anglophone should not speak in English? So you see, the trouble is that I tell them the truth without fear or favor, in keeping with my upbringing as a member of the judiciary. And that's what annoys them. If, for instance, anyone says I have a problem with the Minister of Justice, maybe it's going back to the time he was Secretary General in the presidency. When I raised an alarm, the Secretary of State, the Secretary General does not go out of Yaoundé often. How come the Secretary General in the presidency has 2.5 million every day, including non-working days, only for his fuel? Whereas another Cameroonian needs only 5 francs to buy a Maggi cube for survival. So he happened to
told him that?
I published over and over the years. I was not talking about him. I was talking about the secretary, the Secretary General, an institution. He's no longer there, but the money is still going. So if he took that to heart, and he considers it a justification to owe me a grudge, it's left to him. Where in democracy, people are free to think the way they like.
Now that Chief Justice AYAH Paul ABINE is out of jail, out of prison, now where you are planning to sue the government for?
No, I'm not planning to sue the government. I've taken my case to the petition team, the UN petition team in Geneva. I took it there before my release. The case is there. It is the party now that wants to sue the government. It's no longer AYAH Paul.
The Popular Action Party.
Popular Action Party wants to sue the
But AYAH Paul as a person?
I'm the head of the party. Not me suing the government anymore as a person.
So how much are you demanding? How much is the party demanding?
Well, the lawyers are working on it. I saw a publication talking of 100 billion.
100 billion or million?
Billion. That's 100,000 million, which is a small sum of money, considering what their national president went through. Look, as a cardiac patient, even during this interview, I can die. There's no amount of money that is worth the life of a human being. Not to talk of somebody who has served this country for 39 years. Then all these people are on the run. Their activities have been grounded. How do you compensate them for belonging to a legally recognized party? You see, people have a lot of illusions in this country. We are bound to disagree. There's no situation where two people can be together without disagreeing. But when we disagree, we sit down and see why we have disagreed and see how we can patch up things. There's no war that has never ended at the round table. The only war that has not ended at the round table is the war between God and Lucifer. And because they've not ended at the round table, the war is still going on. It can never end. So, what am I saying? I'm preaching the essence of dialogue. Anybody who believes that he can solve a problem by use of force is somebody who doesn't love, life, human life. If you are a leader, then you don't love your community. Dialogue Even now, for Cameroon to come out of the mess in which we are now, there is absolute need for dialogue. During the dialogue, we can negotiate. It's a dialogue. Negotiation is where you concede, I concede, and we come to a consensus. We can negotiate. But the first thing is to make room for dialogue.
But there was dialogue before, Chief Justice.
There has never been dialogue in Cameroon. If you want dialogue today, people say sovereignty, they just make noise about sovereignty. Sovereignty is what? The Constitution is what provides for sovereignty. And the Constitution of Cameroon says that any international law ratified by Cameroon is higher than the Constitution. So sovereignty has a limit. If we want a proper dialogue, we should get a third party. Because when we are at the round, when I talk of round table, people don't understand what I'm talking about. Round table does not have a head boy. We go there as people, equal. We talk. If there's a third party, it's the one who will moderate. And it's only then that we can really arrive at lasting solutions. What you call dialogue, the government just comes and tells you that this is what we want to do. I was in Parliament for 11 years. The minister in charge of relations with the Assembly will come and tell you that that's what the government wants and there's nothing you can do about it. And so at times, even when an amendment is exceptionally accepted, the text at the end is the original text of the government that is published as the law. You cannot run a country in that kind of way and expect to succeed.
In a sense, this Anglophone crisis, we need dialogue to come out of this.
Absolutely. Let me tell you that it's very easy to start violence. How it develops and how it's going to end, you never ever can predict. You are not God. In Somalia, they had a dictator called Siad Barre. They chased him out. 20 how many years? Maybe 27, 28 years since. There's no government. There's no central government in Somalia. So let us be careful. Dialogue is the one thing that solves everything, every bad situation on earth. I've already given you the example of God himself and Lucifer.
But in this case, Chief Justice, the government, like you say, is like the head boy. On the other hand, you see people who support, who are secessionists, others support federation, and they are hitting hard on social media. In this case now, nobody wants to listen to the other person, and the government wants to remain firm. In this case, can dialogue be fruitful?
I've told you that any leader who loves his country would not put aside dialogue. Colombia was at war for 25 years. It has ended only through dialogue. If you can go to dialogue straight, why go round and cause human sufferings, destruction of human lives and property before going back to dialogue? Whereas you can do it straight. If government does not want dialogue and they want to be firm, then they don't understand the art of governing. Because governing simply means people have told you, we put you there to manage things for us. You cannot be more important than the people who put you there. The people can do without you. You cannot do without the people. The base raises you up. You don't raise the base from up to down. So any leader who believes in standing firm against the people's wish is not a leader. That's what Cameroonian leadership should learn as a lesson. If they want, they have so many technical advisors who are not giving them. We give them free advice. They pay the millions. I give my own for free. I have, since 2010, said the situation in Cameroon is degenerating. My name is Paul, but I'm doing the work of John, the voice in the wilderness. And incidentally, I was John. It's at baptism on the, I think, 24th April 1964 that I changed to Paul, because my cousin took up the name John, and I added John as a son. I became Johnson. They said it was not a Christian name. So I'm doing the work of John. I'm giving them free advice. So I've been saying since 2010, let us sit down and set up a commission of truth and reconciliation. If there's nobody who can run it, put me there. Don't even pay me. So that we diffuse the situation prevailing in Cameroon today. I don't want to talk about problems in the east, problems in the north, problems at sea, problems on the Anglophone side. Where have you ever heard that a ship, a military ship, can sink in 4 minutes? They don't even want to tell us what happened there. So everywhere is trouble.
Insinuating that something
went amiss, something serious went amiss. But at times a ship will take a week or two, depending on the damage, to sink. Because
we read in some flyers that, well, I would not want to say it here, that some other groups facilitated the sinking of the ship.
No, I'm simply saying that Cameroon is on the verge of, falling into the abyss, into a precipice. Let us sit down and find out where things have gone wrong and correct them in time. I have said before that even those people who are in prison, who have already been found guilty by the courts, if we sit down for the purpose of reconciliation, we can ask them to pay whatever they embezzled, so that we go back to, to peace. Let Cameroon be peaceful again. Anybody talking about peace in Cameroon today is somebody who is daydreaming. There's no peace.
Okay. It was a pleasure having you, Chief Justice AYAH ABINE. You are a former advocate at the Supreme Court of Cameroon. You are the president of the Popular Action Party. You are equally the founder of Justice for All. You are a former member of Parliament. Your party, before we go, what hope for your party, since almost all members of your party have gone in?
I'll build it up. I'll build it up again. Let me take this opportunity to thank so many people across the world who fortified me with their prayers, who kept the family going with financial support, who fought for my release. Equinoxe at the forefront. Let me use this opportunity to thank everybody. I am out and will continue to fight for a better tomorrow.
All right, it was a pleasure having you.
I'm delighted.
It was equally a pleasure being with you in this day's edition of the program, The Insight on Equinoxe Television. You've noticed we have been inside the residence of the former Advocate General at Cameroon Supreme Court Chief Justice AYAH ABINE. A pleasure equally being with you. Signing out from the nation's capital, Yaoundé, Emmanuel Job for HANSON Changi. Good night.